Hello, hello, my friends, and welcome to Life with Mona. So today we're talking with Reverend Dr. Pete Odera, and his children call him Dad.
Yes. My wife calls me something else. But
Share?
No, I won't. That's our secret, just me and her.
Oh, that's your code.
Yeah. We have many codes. Yeah.
That's one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate this. This is long time coming.
It is a long time coming because we've talked about this for a while now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I'm glad that we're finally here.
Yeah.
And I think we've picked a wonderful topic for you, which is starting over.
Absolutely.
So I know we were discussing a little bit earlier about what starting over is.
Yeah.
How would you define it? At what point in our life do we encounter this?
Starting over is just starting over. You may start over because you lost your job or you left your job, you're retiring, or maybe you're moving from school into the workspace, or you're leaving home, you're moving out of home for the first time. I deal with a lot of people in those different things. I have the 4 hats that I wear. Being in ministry, being involved in music, being involved in media, but also doing mentorship. I tend to interact with people at different levels, and everybody is going to have to start over at some point.
More than once, correct?
More than once, absolutely, more than once. And I'm not sure that it's something that we're taught in school. Not many schools have programs. Even the best of schools doesn't have programs for helping you necessarily transition into another completely different aspect of life. I'm constantly every year doing several weddings as a minister. I walk people through our 14-week course of married life. And it's never enough. It's never enough to help somebody understand that you're going to share your life with somebody else's complete madness and mix it with your madness, and then let's see how that works for you.
And this person probably has 20-something years, you probably have 30. So this is like 50-something years
together.
And
then there's your hopes, dreams, aspirations, and expectations, some of which, and so people, you know, I'm finding people 2-3 years later saying, I'm done, because they can't cope with what it meant, what they had fantasized about and what is the reality, far removed from each other. So having to start over, even in a married life, having to start over in work, you know, our parents, again, my parents certainly grew up in the generation, came up in the generation where you worked for one company. Almost, I mean, on my mom's side, her sisters, brothers, all worked for East African industries.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean, almost all of them. And there's, I mean, and they stayed. Long service awards, they were there.
Because they worked for like 30-40 years. You didn't leave. Where were you going?
So, I mean, they worked for East African industries, but from where we're from, you either worked for Posta, or you worked, you know, and
when you say where we're from,
your Posta, you either worked for the post office, you worked for Kenya Power,
City Hall,
or you worked for the Kenya Ports Authority, because there was an expectation at independence that we need these kind of people, and because the leaders from where my dad was from, the leaders of the community insisted on an education. So they all went through Maseno High School. They all went whatever, and they came out, and everybody got a job. Everybody got a job, and some kind of administrative job, which was highly needed in government. So if they didn't work for government, they worked for Posta, Power, and what have you.
Building Kenya. Building Kenya.
And then life changed. Here come the Gen Xers, the Generation Xers, whose aspirations are different, because we're the first generation that grew up with television. And then came the millennials, whose job longevity now is less than 2 years. The average millennial will not stay with you for more than 2 years. If they stay with you for more than 2 years, count yourself super blessed. So we're having to start, so this present millennial generation is having to start over more frequently and earlier, dealing at 25, 26, 27, quarter life crisis, what some of our parents were dealing with in retirement.
When they were in their 60s.
In their 50s and 60s.
So would you say then starting over it's split, right? There's the career passion starting over, and then there is the personal starting over.
There is also, and in there's several, because you can start over physically, I have people that I've been talking with who are faced with a life death situation. They have to start over and recover their health.
Yeah.
There's people who've lost their jobs, so there's career, and then there's starting over in life. There's starting over people who I've had to talk to and say, okay, I'm getting over the divorce. 5 years later, they're still trying to pick themselves up. So there's that, there's careers, there's personal, there's even spiritual starting over.
That's
people
true.
who've been involved in churches where maybe there was a mess and or their mentor, pastor, stuff happened, or they found that they're on the wrong path and had to start over. That all those turns are starting over, and it takes some amount of fortitude to do it.
And to walk through it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so maybe let's split them up, and let's start with I think we'll focus mostly on two. We'll focus mostly on two today. The starting over for the career passion path, and the starting over for the relationships. And I know those are two things that are there's a lot of topsy-turvy over those two.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay, so let's start over, or rather, let's start over. Let's start with a career path.
Sure.
And I know you've mentioned a lot of millennials are doing that every 2 to 3 years, but then there's also this other age group of people in their late 30s, early 40s, who are finding themselves in a transitional,
having to transition.
Yes, or realizing, like what I realized, or for me at the time I was 27, in my monologue I was talking about when I was working in this shop, and I picked up a hat and I just thought, I cannot. If I pick up another hat, I'm going to beat somebody with this thing. So I can't. And I had to make that decision to start over. So for those two, whether you're 27 or whether you're 40, talk us through it. How do you transition?
I think the first thing is the realization that this is not where you're. I don't know if I can. I need to say this carefully. Where you're meant to be, or where you're happy. And for those two generations, it means something completely different. Because if you ask the average millennial, what is happiness to you? They'll give you an answer that to the Gen Xer will sound laughable. Says, this is what makes you happy.
So what's a typical, what makes happy for a millennial, let's say?
The survey is showing that the millennial wants to be financially successul.
Okay.
They want to be famous.
They want to be famous.
They want to be famous, even though you have a one. Even though you have a 1 in over 500,000 chance of becoming super famous.
Really? 1 in 500,000?
In fact, it's 500,200 and something. Wow. It's a huge 520 something thousand.
In Kenya or
this is now for world fame. Now, if you want to bring it down to entry level fame is 1 in 62,000, something like that. You have more chances of scoring a hole-in-one at St. Andrews in Scotland than becoming famous.
Okay.
And that's how I know I'm so fortunate, because you walk into a place, people recognize you. I realize if I believed in luck, I'm an extremely fortunate person. But I didn't understand that, understanding that because of what has happened to me, I begin to understand that I'm privileged to be in a position now to speak to people. So the first thing I think that somebody has to recognize is that this is not where I'm, quote unquote, meant to be. That I want more out of life. I think I want more out of life. Not from a position of greed. Not I want more tangible things. I want to own 17 cars and 52 watches, one for every week. and a couple of girlfriends in every country. No, that I'm not talking about greed or lust.
That's exterior. That's exterior.
I'm talking about I'm not fulfilled here. I've talked to people who are at the top of their career and are unfulfilled. I spoke with I've sat at the table this close to international award-winning people who talk, and in the first 10, I met this guy for the first time in my life. And he was the person I was really looking at with admiration. That man, when I grew up, and this is me in my early music career, I'm thinking, man, this guy has really made it. And in 5-10 minutes, he started to cry. I said, how can you be unhappy? And he was disappointed in his life. I said, hang on a second. And this started recurring often. People who seemed successful were frustrated. Part of it has to do with realizing that there's more to life than this.
So what you're saying, Pete, is that, for instance, for me, I want to be, award-winning in terms of writing. So Oscar for Best Original Screenplay.
Yes.
New York Times bestselling list.
There you go.
But what you're saying is, if I'm doing those things for exterior reasons, so that Mona can be walking down the street and people are like, look, it's Mona, then even when I get there, I'm not going to be satisfied.
In fact, I guarantee it. I know many people who are so driven, and I've been on international platforms, I mean on millions of people watching, and I realized something, that life is sometimes can be empty.
Yeah.
It looks very exciting for me, and trying to explain this to people who are not exposed to that kind of life is a very difficult thing. So you won't be happy driving a Ferrari and going to Paris and France. You know, I wake up in the morning, I'm having breakfast in New York. In the evening, I'm having dinner in LA.
People are following me. You know, I have my makeup person, my hair person.
Okay, that's a bit much in my space. But people want that, and the reality is the people who have it say, if I can just get a moment by myself. So I think for me is the number one realization that I'm not where I'm supposed to be. I'm not finding fulfillment in this thing. So that's the beginning of the quest.
How do you know? How do you know the difference between I'm not finding satisfaction in this versus I'm just being greedy because I want a Ferrari?
Conflict and pain are often indicators that change is necessary.
Just say that again.
Conflict and pain are often indicators that change is necessary.
Yeah.
When something that used to give you joy or used to be comfortable with starts to hurt you, and you're looking around, you say, you know what, you start feeling done with something. And some of us are, stoic and long-suffering, but you can be long-suffering and say, you know what, this thing needs to change. And so if you're in the space, especially in the place of careers, a lot of people are coming to their 40s and saying, I thought this is what I wanted to do. I studied law or I studied chemistry, but this is not. I have a friend who studied biochemistry. Yeah. She went and studied biochemistry and did everything that she, and she's brilliant. She's now working with musicians here in Nairobi. She's the one who's in charge of Ghetto Classics.
Oh, wow.
That was her heart always, to do music. Yeah. And she'd go to music school and she'd be bored because her teachers were not qualified to teach her.
She was here?
So gifted, yes. She was so gifted.
Yeah.
She's an international level soprano singer to me.
Nice.
And so I said that sometimes it's a question of environment. You have talent that your environment cannot embrace.
Embrace and sustain.
I'll give you an example from Lupita's story.
Yes.
So here was this girl who for most people seemed to have an attitude, was never happy. They said, well, you're boasting because your father's important.
Yeah, exactly.
But really what it was that the environment was too small for the size of her gift. And sometimes your gift is so huge. Yeah. And then you say, but why am I here? And back to your story in the monologue, is so that you can learn some things that you'd be robbed of the experience of humanness.
That's true.
I went to high school. My sister and my brother went to national schools. And that was a big deal back in our day. So my brother went to Nairobi school. My sister went to Limuru. And so you either go to Nairobi school or Limuru girls, and because there was a path that was charted for you.
Or Alliance. Okay. I went to Alliance, so I had to throw that in.
You had to throw that one in. I went to neither. None of those. And then I went to Kakamega to do my A-levels. Kakamega.
Where? Hi.
Kakamega High.
Okay.
And in going there, people always ask me, oh, you speak like somebody. Were you in St. Mary's? I said, get out of here.
You do speak like St. Mary's.
Get away. But you see, this was the thing. My father insisted. I got in trouble for that.
Yeah.
My father insisted. My late father insisted, you must speak clearly. And so I get to the first day in school, first English class, and I'm asked to read. New boy, read. So I read, and I read clearly how my father taught me to read.
Yes.
And the teacher said, why are you boasting?
Yeah. Wow. And so they were pulling you down.
So what I'm saying is that, but my light still, and I didn't understand that I had a gift.
Yeah.
I had a gift.
Yeah.
I had a gift. Always getting in trouble. Always getting in trouble because there I am studying for something that I'm not meant to be.
Okay.
What was this all about? I remember sometimes tearfully remembering how my teachers picked on me and said, what was wrong with this kid? I had no teachers who I met later says, you were always notorious. You were always, says, but you don't understand, I was a leader.
Yeah.
But you didn't understand that you were dealing with the future of the Kenya music industry.
Okay.
if you knew it, you'd have treated me differently. But if you treated me differently, I might not be who I am today.
And I kind of get what you're saying. Kind of like, if you had treated me differently, I probably would have just stayed in that comfort zone because I was being treated differently. But I was forced to go out so that I could
grow. Forced to grow, forced to find definition, forced to find expression in a space where expression was absent.
And you needed that for the music career, especially back when, in the day when there was no such thing.
Can
you're
you
a musician,
imagine?
how?
And then here you are with all your flamboyance and you have ad-libs. People didn't ad-lib in our church. What, ad-libbing? What's wrong with you? You know, there's no what they call funky music in this electric. So that I'm dealing with change that I had no idea that I was birthing the contemporary gospel music industry at the time. I didn't know that this is what I was doing.
And you needed the strength.
Right. And so all this stuff was giving me fortitude to fight, being able to fight the entire church establishment. That was, and I didn't know at 16 that this is what I was being prepared for.
So powerful.
So for me, I think that being able to learn how to change and move and learn this new conversation through the experience. Now, those experiences prepared me for what I'm in now. When somebody comes, oh, the world is falling apart. I said, I know it feels like it's falling apart, but you're just growing.
Yeah. Okay, so I think it's, I mean, when you're going through the hard time, like even for me, after I came back to Kenya, where I now started really digging into my actual treasure building, but you still go through a lot of stuff, like being a freelance writer. You go through times when you are so stupid broke, you don't even, you know, you don't even know where to start. You know, rent is coming, you have no clue, you know. So sometimes that is a point at which people say, you know what, it's time to stop, I need to go and do something else. Again, how do you tell the difference between me, like, you know, 2 years ago when I was thinking, what? No way, when you blended with this career thing, you know, versus you saying, no, actually, let me just keep on going. How do you tell?
So, another conversation that has to be had is a money conversation.
Okay.
Because the reality of life is that, like you said, you know, you have to pay rent, have to do things, you know, you have to buy food.
Exactly, yeah.
So the money conversation is a very important one. And this is, for me, that's the purpose of faith, of really understanding that money isn't everything.
Yeah.
Pete, you know, you're just saying that. No, the truth is, I learned how to get along without money. And until you have that conversation, it's very difficult for you to then advance and say, okay, I want a certain level of comfort.
Yeah.
And so we have people in our city who are driving comfortable cars, living in comfortable houses that are not theirs. So there's the appearance of comfort. And then, I'm not allowed to say that phrase because I'm a pastor, people will misunderstand me. So ordure hits the propellers.
Can I say it for you?
And when that stuff happens, and life happens, and you start to go into a tailspin, and something happens, and you kind of go crazy. You say, okay, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do here? Because your source isn't working anymore. And you realize that this stuff isn't important. I've had friends who just said, I'm going to shut it down. I'm moving to Shags and live a very simple life. Go to the lake, get fish, come eat. I plant my mbogas and some few maize over there, and I'm good. And so I feel that there's a high level of complexity sometimes that we want, and sophistication that is consumerism and driven by the Joneses and what other people are doing.
That sort of slows down our quest for our dream, or, like you're saying, puts us into a rat race. Where I know this is not what I want to do, but I have to keep doing it so that I can live while my actual passion is on the side.
So, faith requires that you abandon fear.
Ooh.
Because if you're afraid of being poor, you'll never walk in faith. Because your dream is so strong. I mean, think about your journey. If you think about your journey, your belief in yourself is so strong. Now, I'm saying this may not be for everybody. But generally speaking, your dream is so strong. But if you don't believe in your dream, you live in constant fear of lack, constant fear of ridicule, constant fear of never making it. And then you're 60, then you're 70. You say, I regret this. I wish I had done
something else.
And you have to choose one. You have to choose I'm going to believe or I'm going to fear.
And when I fear, that is when I end up just going through the motions
with
to secure myself.
With a lot of cortisol, adrenaline, stress, ulcers, all sorts of things, and you find you're old. You're old before your time. You say, why am I tired all the time? Because of stress. And I think that finding joy, I heard Grammy Award winner Diane Reeves say at a workshop I attended recently, she said, I follow the peace. I follow peace. If there's anything or anyone who stresses me, I need to have peace around me to be creative. And I think that's a very important thing. You know, even if you study from a biblical perspective, you see that when you have peace about something, I've known people said, okay, I'm going to marry this chap or I'm going to go to this job, and they didn't have peace about it. There's a voice inside that's saying, So learning how to be in touch with inside, with your gut feeling, with the Spirit of God, to be able, because your spirit, in the book you say, The Alchemist, there's the wind of the soul, is going to be speaking to you constantly and giving you, because that's your
map.
So it's like a North Pole that's saying your compass that's saying this is the way to go, and this is the thing that I'm trying to get younger people to get into. My kids now are 18 and 16, to get them to listen to the promptings, and when you hear those promptings, you'll begin to understand that I'm doing the wrong thing, I'm with the wrong people, I'm in the wrong place, and there's almost always an indicator.